Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. I have just been doing a few jobs in the garden this morning, but I thought I would pick the camera up and kind of take you around on the rest of the jobs that I'm doing in the garden for the day. The wind has just picked up now, which is great for me because I would like a nice cool breeze, but hopefully the microphone isn't interfering too much with the wind. But yeah, for today I thought I would do just kind of like a garden with me style video. I haven't really done too much yet. It's been a bit of a slow morning, which is usually how my mornings go. I did go down to my local garden centre to just check on how the flowers sold over the weekend. I think I included them in my last video, or like an overlay of what they looked like. I took 4 bunches down of the ranunculus and they all sold down there, which was really great. So I'm going to take maybe 6 or so, depending how many I have, probably later this week. So yeah, I went down there and had a good chat about the flowers and gardening, and yeah, just picked up the bucket as well. Today and yesterday I've also been harvesting some worm castings from one of my worm bins. I have a video all about how I harvest and use worm castings on the channel that I can leave a link to, but basically I use the light scraping method where I take the middle layer out, which is the layer that is finished and that I want to harvest. And then I put that on the top, take the lid off, and basically throughout the day I let the natural light hit the worm castings, and over time the worms will move gradually down into the next layer, and as they do I can kind of scrape the surface of those worm castings and use them in the garden. So I'm going to save them all in a few buckets and use them around the natives and some of the flowers that I'm going to be planting. I have about 5 worm farms. 3 of them I use to compost all of like the cat waste that comes out of the kitty litter. So all of that used to be cat waste and weeds and food scraps, kind of just mix it all in there. And then I do let it sit for quite a while, so you really can't see any residue or leftovers of anything in those worm castings. But because I do have a bit of the cat waste in there, I don't use that on anything edible or around any edibles in the garden. It just purely goes on a lot of the native plants and flowers that are in a position where the runoff isn't going to like run down into the edible crops that we have. So I'm very careful with that. I always wear gloves, always wash my hands after it. And while I'm pregnant, Scott is the one that actually deals with the kitty litter and does all of that. So I'm very safe and very cautious with cat waste, because I know there's a lot of people who were wondering about that. I am all on board with safety and precautions in the garden wherever I need to be, particularly throughout pregnancy. But for the rest of the afternoon and day, I have a few jobs I want to get done. I'll probably set the camera up and do a voiceover for a few of them. But when I was getting some watering done just now, I noticed that some of the flowers are looking a little bit yellow, some of the seedlings that I have. I'll put an overlay here of the straw flowers, and I think they just need a little bit of fertilizer to kind of get going, to keep growing in their pots, because they're not ready to go into the ground just yet. So I think firstly I am going to see if I have some worm tea, some leachate that comes out of the worm farms. And this worm tea is just from the worm farms where we put food scraps only into. That's the only ones that I will kind of harvest the worm tea from. The other ones I like to keep a little bit more on the dry side. I'm going to go and get some of that, dilute it in a watering can, and give these plants a feed, I think. While that water is draining through the worm farm, I am just coming down to the flowers to do a little bit of a checkup. Had to put my hat on because it is so sunny, and wow, there are a lot of flowers blooming. Some Let me turn you around and I'll show you what we're working with at the moment. So the ranunculus are definitely in full bloom at the moment, and this honestly is actually not what you want to really see in your flower farm, is all of this colour. This isn't fantastic because it just means that the blooms are too blown open to be able to use and to sell. I'm probably going to do a harvest, I think Thursday night, and I can push some of these blooms, like with some of the stems, they have one bloom that's blooming right now and then another bud, but others are like fully blown open. So that's fine. I can come through and give all of these a nice deadhead, and then I should get some more blooms later this week actually. Some of these are just stunning in colour, and some look really, really funky, like this one here. I just ordered like a really standard rainbow mix of ranunculus. They're usually just kind of like the single variety rather than those really, really fluffy Italian ranunculus. But this one is just beautiful. It's so stunning. So got quite a few beautiful blooms, but unfortunately, life of a flower farmer, you need to come through and deadhead a lot of these. On the other side, I have a few more ranunculus. I actually have some of the Remembrant ranunculus. These are a little different in colour and size, I suppose, and they're just about to bloom, which is wonderful. I am going to give all of these a really good cut back, and I'm also going to give them a fertilise with some fish emulsion. I have some Charlie Carp that I'll use, and that'll give them a really nice boost. We haven't had rain for so long, and it's kind of stressing me out a little bit because we had so much rain and then we didn't. And the stock here are kind of struggling a little bit with that. They're just looking a little stressed and sad, but they have just about started to bloom. So next week's bouquets should have some stock in them. The next row over is all of my Statice. That is growing really well. This honestly doesn't mind too much dry weather. It does definitely need a drink though, but it is a pretty good drought tolerant flower. And then I have some more established plants down the end there, and these I have been harvesting and using in arrangements. Got some really beautiful colours coming on, so I'm hoping that all of these will hopefully be ready for Thursday night or Friday morning, depending on how I need to push it. And then the row over from that is just more stock, and these have actually started to bloom now. So these are all of the column stock, and this is, I think it's like White Christmas or something like that. They smell divine, but yeah, I can just see they're looking a little bit sad and wilty even in the morning when I first come out here. This is kind of the middle of the day right now, so it's understandable that they look a bit like this. But yeah, I need to kind of keep on top of these. So that's a little bit of a flower update. When I was listening to myself talk just then, because it is the middle of the day, I think I am going to just hold off on deadheading these flowers. I don't want to stress the plants out with the sun that we're having, and we're supposed to get rain over the next few days. So yeah, I think I'll just wait another few hours until I deadhead these. They're looking so beautiful though. But one thing I did notice, just a tiny few spots of powdery mildew. Every year this happens with the ranunculus. It is just what happens in our climate. To be honest, I've already had so many more than I did last year in terms of blooms from the ranunculus, so I'm not too worried about it. But I did give them a treat with some eco fungicide. I don't love using this. I don't love using anything if I don't have to. However, if it does mean that I can save the flowers, then I do like to use it. So I might just keep an eye on them over the next few days. I might do another treatment to extend the blooms from these, but they do respond really well to both fertilizer from Worm Tea and Charlie Carp, particularly the Worm Tea because it is like really pH balanced, and Charlie Carp has a good amount of phosphorus in it, which is really good for flowers when they're blooming. While I'm down here, I'll also give you an update on the anemones, which are, they're not doing fantastic this year, I'll say that. This is another thing I need to come through today or tomorrow and do, and just give this bed a good weed. They're looking beautiful, they look stunning. However, the stems are just too short to use in bouquets. Like, I can't really use a teeny tiny stem like that in a bouquet. Jam jar posies, they'd be fantastic, but I'm not doing markets, so I'm not selling those this year. And I was hoping they would get longer over time, but the plants just haven't had enough moisture. So I need to give them a good drink as well, and just give the bed a bit of a weed. I'm pretty disappointed in these this year. They were amazing last year, but I find we either have a good anemone year or a good ranunculus year, and this year it's the ranunculus. So that's okay, they're still beautiful to look at, and the bees and pollinators love them. Trying to get in the shade a bit. I'm going to go and fertilize those seedlings, then we'll probably switch to a voiceover and I am going to get some jobs done. This was a very chatty introduction, but I just felt like I needed a little bit more of a chatty garden catch up with you all, because I haven't done that in a while. I am planning on doing a garden tour probably next week or the week after, to focus a lot more on some of the veggies that we're growing, because everything has just grown so quickly and is always changing in the garden. So like I have mentioned a few times before, I usually will dilute the worm tea or the concentrate that comes out of the worm farm about 1 part worm tea to 10 parts water. I find this works really well for seedlings, and I really like using worm tea for fertilizing my seedlings because it is pH neutral, what comes out of the worm farm, and it's also really gentle on the seedlings, so it's not going to burn them at all if I make the concentrate too strong, and it's just kind of more a slow release fertilizer for the plants to uptake as they need. So I'm a big fan of using worm tea as a fertilizer, so I'm just giving those straw flowers a feed, as well as some of these tomatoes that I potted up the other day, and also making sure to water the snow peas or the sugar snaps that I have planted, because they are all starting to have their pods on them now, which is so exciting to see, and I am very excited to start harvesting these. I really wanted to start a few more seeds on this day as well. This is a very gentle task that I can do if I am feeling like I need a break from doing all the physical things in the garden. So I'm starting a few more of the tomato seeds that I have today. And I like to start these just in little plastic pots like this that I have recycled again and again. And I just kind of make little divots in the soil to then place the tomato seeds in. And then once the seedlings have grown and they have their true leaves, then I will up pot them into their own individual pots. But yeah, this is how I usually like to start my tomato seeds, and I have always had good luck with this method. So I was planting a few different varieties. This is the Thai pink egg, which is one of my favorites that I always grow every single year. I was also growing or planting the yellow cherry honeybee, again another one of my favorites, and I was also sowing some Roma tomatoes as well. In the last little pot, I was sowing some rosella. I am really hoping we can grow rosella here. I'm not too sure how it's going to grow. I've never tried it down here before, but we'll see how we go. And then I like to just top the pots with a little bit of vermiculite. This just makes sure that the soil doesn't dry out and also prevents a lot of fungus gnats from being attracted to the soil. And these all live in my very basic greenhouse kind of setup that I have made next to a window with just some old containers with the pots on trays, and everything's been germinating really well like this. So yeah, this system is very basic but working well for what we need. Later in the day, I was planting some lettuce seedlings. So these are called all year round, and I haven't grown this variety before, but it is a variety that you can grow all year round. So I wanted to try it and see how it goes. I'm going to be planting a few on the south side of these sugar snap peas to have a little bit more shade and protection from the harsh sun. And then I'm planting some on the other side of where I'm sitting, so the other side of the pathway, and they'll get a little bit more sun there. So it'll be interesting to see how these plants respond to the different amounts of sunlight they get. And I'm hoping they have enough nutrients in this area. I have been doing kind of like a chop and drop over the last few weeks. There's a little pathway here that I'm kind of watering right now. This has had a bunch of just different materials that I've been chopping and dropping, and they've been breaking down over time, and I'm hoping that that will just continuously feed the soil and all of the plants that are planted in this area. Next up is just a bit of a tidy up of all of the jonquils that are just going over at the moment. I am going to wait another week or two to kind of just really tidy up these. You want to make sure that you leave the plants without their flowers just to kind of naturally die down over time, and that'll just make sure that they can put all of their energy into photosynthesizing and then putting that energy back into the bulbs below the ground so that they can multiply and come back year after year. I'm also just deadheading some anemones in my fairy garden and just giving the whole area a little bit of a tidy up. Speaking of anemones, I also needed to weed this bed here, so that is what I'm doing now. And all of the weeds that I collect, they just go into the compost bin, and they are just going to break down over time and feed the soil wherever I need extra nutrients. I'm really trying to keep on top of weeding these. I really wish that they would be producing a little bit more, but it's just been really sporadic with rain that we've been having, and I think anemones just prefer a little bit more moisture than we have had over the last few weeks. I am also doing the same to the ranunculus, just coming through and giving these a nice trim to ensure that I have blooms over the next few days. Like I was saying before, it was nice and cool at this time, so I could harvest all of these and the plants can continuously then produce more flowers. I do have a harvest and arranging video coming up very soon, so you'll be able to see more ranunculus in that video. But yeah, these have been such a joy to work with over the last few weeks. They just bring me so much happiness to have a row of rainbow flowers to enjoy and share with my community. The last job that I wanted to do was actually to plant some yellow butter bush beans. I think that's what they're called, and I've never grown these before, but I'm going to try them in the cottage garden, just see how they go. I think you can grow them to eat as kind of like fresh beans, or you can grow them to dry the beans, so I might try a little bit of both. But I am just planting a few in each hole to make sure that they all germinate, or at least one germinates, and hopefully we don't have any visitors come by and eat some of these seeds. So I'll keep you updated on how these go. And in the meantime, Scott was also working on watering the ranunculus, and I didn't show here, but we were planning on giving them a feed as well. So like I said before, we use Charlie Carp to give the ranunculus a feed. So that's another job that we were doing. I just didn't get any footage of that on this day. That is pretty much all that I worked on today. I really hope you enjoyed coming along with me for a day in the garden. I am loving all of the spring jobs that we are working on right now. It's so awesome to see all of the plants growing much faster now that the days are warmer. I'd love to know what's happening in your spring garden at the moment, or what's happening in your autumn garden if you're in the northern hemisphere. Thank you so much for being here today and watching this video. I hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are in the world, and until my next one, happy gardening everyone. Bye.